Hey team! So today we are going to look at creating a home space for our VR world, environment, game. So this is going to be a space where you can invite people into your game instead of just dropping them into a scene and they don't know what the controls are, they don't know what they're experiencing quite yet. You can sort of integrate them into the world through this home space environment. It's for various things, really whatever you want to put in there. You're going to put your UI menu, control mechanics. It might be good to tell us a little bit about the project. I'm going to end up having a chapter selection, or I might call it something else, but there's various parts or scenes in my world that I'm creating, and I'd like to have it to where if somebody wanted to skip ahead because it's sequential, that they would have the ability to do that. One thing that is important to note at first is your home space can look however simple or complex you want it. The person won't be moving around, so just think about their immediate environment. They won't have the ability to control their locomotion moving forward. You just want them to stay in one place in front of your menu, basically. But you can do an immersive video in this space. You can do a 360 image as a skybox, just that. You could put them on some sort of platform. Or you could actually use a 3D environment, which is what I'm doing. I'm just taking the environment that's in scene 1 and I've edited it back a little bit. And that's just going to be the environment that I use for my home space. So you just want it to be clean, not too cluttered, and designed with intent. Step 1, you're gonna set up your scene, and I've already done that here, so figure out what you want to do. And once you have your scene set up, you're gonna add in the VR controls. So here, if I minimize that, I've got my XR stuff and XR Interaction Manager, XR Origin with the camera, the main camera. And I just have my left controller, and you're going to want the Ray interactor here. So if you don't have a Ray interactor, this is the time to include it. And I will link a Ray interactor demo below from Fistful of Shrimp. The right controller also has a Ray interactor. And for XR movement, I have my locomotion system, but I've unchecked the script, so you can't move around. The only reason, I've unchecked everything here, but the only reason that I have it is because I want to keep the snap turn provider. And then you want to just position the player. So sort of thought a little bit about where I want them to look in the beginning. And you can, take your XR Origin and you can turn it, and you can see in the play view or the game view that you can see where you're turning, where they'll look first, right? I'll probably end up changing this, but I want them to be right around here. I've also positioned the player on the y-axis pretty high up because I want them to sort of be able to look down in the space. So just think about how you want the player to be, or the person to be oriented. My reasoning is I've created a pond here, and I'm gonna end up putting little animated fish, and I want them to be able to look down and see the fish. Time to incorporate user interface elements. I'm gonna create an empty object by right-clicking in my hierarchy and going to create empty. I'll just call it, in all caps, user interface, so I can see it really easily. I'll right-click my empty object and go to XR here, XR, not UI. Go to XR, and from here you can go to UI canvas. That way you'll be able to interact with the UI. And I don't know if y'all have tried to make this yet, but it's possible that it's messing up because you didn't choose the XR canvas, you chose the regular one. Here in render mode, you can see that it is set to world space so that we can interact with VR. So make sure it's not set to camera or overlay. And one quick thing to note, on your Ray interactor, there's this box that says enable interaction with UI game objects. So you want to make sure that's checked. Make sure that's checked. And then you can check the other Ray interactor on your right controller and enable interaction with UI game object. Check that. Right click our user interface section. Cool, so once you've got this canvas, it's going to be our home menu is what I'll call it. From here, you can go ahead and add panels to your canvas. UI panel. And this panel now is covering our entire canvas, which is the home menu. And you can see that the canvas is quite large. So you just, we're gonna need to scale it down a bit. So grabbing this little middle box, I have the transform tools selected so I can transform everything. So I'm just gonna scale it down and reposition it to the area that I would like for people to be looking at it in. There, so this seems to be a good position so I can see it in the scene and in the game view here. And I'm making it sort of landscape because I want to create another panel underneath to add different tabs to, or maybe buttons, so that I can select, like sort of switch the panel based on what I want to be viewing. So I'll just duplicate my home menu, and this one I'll call button menu or tab menu, and I just want to move it down and make it smaller. And I'm angling it slightly so it has a little bit of dimension since we're in a 3D space. We can go ahead and change the color over here if you want. You can get the color picker and choose like a color from the world potentially, so that you can be aesthetically cohesive with your design. And copying this hexadecimal, and I'll just go ahead and paste it here so they match. Cool, and I'll probably end up changing this later, but it's good for right now. And next I am going to add some buttons to my bottom panel. So in the button menu, on panel, I'm going to right click and go to UI and select Button Text Mesh Pro. There's also drop down and input field and scroll bar and slider and all sorts of stuff here that you can play with, so take a look at that. And then resize it to fit your space. I'll click on my first button. In the inspector, go and change the color. So I'm going to do the color that already exists, the color of the panel, but then I'm going to make it either a little bit lighter or darker depending on what looks best. I think lighter looks best, so I'll do that for all my buttons. And it's sort of blending into the background right now, and it's a little gray, but it's okay. I'm not super concerned. So inside of your button, if you go to the drop down, it already has this text object here. So you can go here under text input and call it what you want. For me, I'll do about first. And then the next one will be controls. And then the third one will be chapters. And you can select a different font, or really importing a font that works for you would be probably a pretty good idea. But for right now, I'll just select my favorite one. I don't love all of these, but the Oswald one seems fine. Okay, and the other thing that we can do here in button, if you go down below the color and you see this section here titled button, there is a normal color, highlighted color, a pressed color, and a selected color. We can do specific color if we're hovering over it. So maybe we would choose a darker color to hover, whatever you think is best. And then for pressed, a pink. I don't know. I'm just doing whatever I feel, or maybe green. So highlighted, pressed, and then you could do selected as well. So to identify that it's the one that you are currently on, and I'm gonna test out what like a darker purple might look like here. So let's go ahead and add these colors to our other buttons as well. All right, so now we've gotten a color change, and I'm gonna label my buttons to be descriptive. So button about, button controls, and button chapters. Sweet. So I want different sub panels to come up whenever I click on these different buttons. So within the home menu, I'll just name this panel background. And I'm going to duplicate by Control D, and I'll name this panel About panel. And I want to make it slightly smaller, so I'll just scale it down. And I'm going to make this color slightly lighter here. And duplicate the About panel, and I'll call this one Controls panel. And I'll just change the color. And then I will duplicate that, and I will call the last one Chapters panel, and I will change the color. With my About button, if you scroll down underneath the colors and you see this, there's an on-click function here. And so whenever I click on my About button, I want the About panel object, and I'm just going to grab my About panel and I'm going to drop it here. So grab it and drop it. I want that object to appear and all of the other panels to disappear. So whenever I have that selected, I will into function and go to game object, and down at the bottom there's active boolean, bool for boolean. Just click that. And you want, I want it to be set active. And then I'm going to add another one, and I want my controls panel, game object, set active, and uncheck that. So I want to uncheck the set active when that one's pressed. And then the same thing goes for my chapters panel. So now, whenever I click on my About panel sets active, and the other panels are inactive. And then while I'm at it, I want my About panel to show up first. So I'll just, in the inspector at the top, set this, deactivate the controls and deactivate the chapters. Button About is done, so now we'll do the same thing to button controls. So I'm going to just take my whole UI and move it up a bit, and time to test it. So let's save it. I'll maximize my screen so hopefully you can see what I'm looking at, and press play. It looks like the function is working. Whenever I put my rate interactor hover over the About, it changes color and it does everything. So it changes whenever I pull the trigger, it goes green, and whenever I release, it turns to purple. But my controls for some reason aren't working with the color.
but my chapters are. So whenever I press, it's green, and release, it's purple. So everything is functioning, but the controls color isn't working. That's the only thing. So we'll have to figure that out. Instead of struggling, I think I'm just gonna delete my controls button and try again. Well, that seems to have fixed it. So that's good. So I'm on about, and it's purple. I'm on chapters, and it's greenish blue. Oh, it still says chapters. Oops, my bad. And then that one is blue. So I just need to change this to controls, but everything is working good. In my about panel, I'm gonna right click and go to UI and add in some text. So go to text mesh pro, and you can touch these guys and make your text area a little bit smaller here. Size it to fit your panel. And then over in the inspector, we can change some things. So you can put what you want to say about the work. So brief description of project may go here, or any other just important content. Maybe there's like some way to like introduce the participant into the experience and give them some background context before they go in. Changing the font to fit whatever you chose earlier, and you can lower the size, font styles, material presets, vertex color, color gradient, all sorts of things. I'm just going to change it to 12 for right now. I like a light yellow. Quick tip, it's just a painter's tip, and I think it might probably apply to graphic design as well. Pure white is sometimes hard on the eyes and it sometimes sticks out like a sore thumb, so you might want to just, even if you want white, maybe just barely shift it to a little bit of having a hue, and it'll be subtle, but it'll be nice. For me, I want to go a little bit more yellow, on the yellow side here. So feel free to customize. Your controls panel, it's going to be about what controls are required in the game. So for me, in my experience, you do have to, in some cases, move around using the joystick, and then you grab things using the grab button on the side, and then the trigger button can select things. So, you know, you could potentially put some GIFs in here, or like little short videos, or maybe it's just images of that you illustrate that are of the control, and like somebody grabbing the side, or maybe you like point to the side, or better yet, just highlight the side grip button, right, and say what it'll do. Grabbing objects, highlight the joystick, move around, and then you could highlight the trigger and select. And then whatever sort of illustration you make, one will go here, one will go here, one will go here potentially. You know, figure out how best to show that off. That's going to take me some time, so I'm not going to do it right now. But in the meantime, I'll just put maybe raw image is what you might do. I'll just put a random AI image here for right now. It'll change. Oh, and you know what? I forgot to just put a play button or or enter button. I'll add it over to the right side. Cool, so now I've got an enter button, so that whenever I press enter, I can just start the simulation. But before I do that, in my chapters, I'm going to turn off controls and turn on chapters. I'll add just several buttons here for each chapter. So I've got chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and chapter 5. I've got about 5 chapters here. So I'll just add a button for each, and whenever I press on the button, you will then go to like directly that scene and start from there. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll change. This is all very wordy. I'm going to replace things with icons in the future, hopefully. Okay, so we've got our UI menu. We're able to go from About, Controls, Chapters, and Enter. And whenever I click on the Enter button, I actually want to start experiencing the thing. So go to File, Build Settings, and if you want to do scene transitions, you need to make sure all of your scenes are in this section here. Right now I've got my 1, 2, and 3, but I don't have my home space, so I'll probably need to add that there. So just add open scenes, and I added the home space. But if you don't have your other scenes, all you need to do is in the project, go to your scenes, and then grab all the scenes that you want and just drag and drop them into the hierarchy here. And then whenever you go to File, Build Settings, you'll see them and you can click on them and you can add them. And then you can, remove them from this area. Now, hopefully you have a scripts folder where you keep all your custom scripts. Right click, create, C# script, enter scene transition is what I'm going to call it, and I'm going to double click it. Hopefully you have Visual Studio installed. You should have done that whenever you first got Unity. Up top, we need to do using Unity Engine .scene management. Enter scene transition is the script name. We need to add a function to load scene 1. Do public void load scene 1. Oh, and I just pressed tab and it did scene manager, so calling the scene manager dot load scene, and then open close parentheses scene 1. But scene 1 is not going to work because it has to be the exact same name as what I actually named my scene 1, and it's called waiting room scene 1. So I'll go ahead and type in waiting room scene 1. Make sure you get that exactly correct, the way that you wrote it. And then get rid of void update. So this is all you need to do, I believe. And then press save. Public is not valid. Oh, I'm using void start, but I actually should instead be using, I should not be using void start. Okay, so my enter scene 1 script is super duper simple. Looks like you don't even need these either. So I will copy this script and it'll be in the description below for you to just copy over. And then you go to your enter button here and you're gonna add a component and it will be enter scene transition. On click for the button enter, instead of doing all of this stuff, which we actually don't want to be doing, so I'm going to press the minus. I believe you have to select the button itself here, and then in the function, so in the drop down it just says enter scene transition, and then here you can just select load scene 1. So that just go ahead and save that, and let's press play and see if it works. All right, so my headset is struggling pretty hard right now, so I'm gonna have to optimize, but it does look like everything. So let's go to about and brief description, controls, the image, chapters, all the chapters. That looks really good. And then enter, and oh snap, it did it. It entered into scene 1. Dun, dun, dun. Very cool. And my scene 1 is sort of in my home, like the home space replicated it, so people wouldn't be so, like, it wouldn't be so jarring, the transition. Let's see if my second transition works, because I'm supposed to enter into her head and then it'll go into scene 2. Yeah, cool. All right, so the it's running really laggy, so I'm gonna have to, you know, go in and make some things lower res and fix some stuff. But it worked, and it entered into scene 1. And so next up, I really want to show you how to, whenever you're in the game or the experience or whatever, and you're enjoying it, pressing on the Oculus home button to get back to your menu, or maybe like pull up your controls to remind the participant, what the controls are, but also maybe just give them, maybe they want to like pause the experience real quick, and so we'll look at that next.